Okay, we are going to do Thankful Pumpkins today. Here's the original. Make sure you guys can see that. All right. So we used a couple different brushes in this and a palette knife. So if you want it to have the same textured background as mine, you'll need a palette knife for that. You can just get a cheap plastic one at Walmart or your craft store if you don't already have one. And then I'm gonna use a bigger round brush and then kind of like a medium sized one. And then we will use our 1-inch flat wash also. So basically 2 rounds and a flat wash and your palette knife, and you'll be good to go. As far as colors, we've got our burnt umber and grass green, our white, sage green, tropic orange, wine, ripe tomato, spiced carrot, and our Key West, which is our background color. So the color list is available where you can just print that off so you don't have to try to jot down and remember those colors. It's in a PDF format that comes with the video, so you'll have access to that so you can get those where you need them. So we are just gonna start with filling in our background first. So I know I want to have, it's gonna be all the crazy background, okay, with the Key West and our white. So those are gonna be the colors that we're working with. But I want to go ahead and make my shape of my pumpkin so I kind of know where to stop. So I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. My pumpkins take up a pretty big majority of my left side. So I'm going to start about right here, just kind of curve down, kind of curve back over like that. And this is just to get your outline down. This does not have to stay this way necessarily. You'll be able to go back and edit that. And then we want to put your other one down. And this one's going to overlap. So that area in between here, that'll all be filled in with our white. And I kind of have that going off the page here. So again, that just is to give you a general idea. We're going to go ahead and start filling this in. And this is just to get a quick base coat on there. We're going to come back with our palette knife and go over top of it. And I'm going to grab some of my vanilla. We want this in our background and we're gonna have it some in our pumpkin too. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab a little bit of that. We're gonna kind of bounce back and forth between these. And again, this doesn't need to be anything super thick. It's just to get a little bit of a base coat on there. So I've got the white and the Key West on here right now. You can use a little bit of white with it if you want to tone it down. I like the look of the vanilla with it too. I think I forgot to show you guys that color in the beginning. So we'll add vanilla to that. So that one's from Michaels, or you can get any kind of off-white. You can grab some from Walmart, has them too. So it doesn't really matter which one you choose. So just crazy brush strokes, nothing too specific here. I'm just kind of filling that in. Okay. So just like that. And I'm just gonna set that brush down for right now. And I'm gonna grab my palette knife. I'm gonna put these on here so you guys can kind of see how I do it. I am not adding any gel medium to this yet. You can come back and add some if you want. You don't necessarily have to have it. It just makes it a little bit thicker. So what I'm doing, I've got the vanilla and a little bit of the Key West, and see how I kind of put it on the back side, because that's how I'm gonna add that texture on there. So since I have so much teal on my background already, I can get a little bit more on there, here and there, but I want to add quite a bit of that vanilla, maybe some white mixed in there too. So this is all to your preference. I really like the look of the scraped background. You can do this with just a brush if you don't want to use a palette knife, or if it makes you nervous. You by no means have to. It's just how I kind of like it to look here. Maybe add a little bit, maybe a bolder brush stroke, or scrape in there. So, and I'm using mini palettes today because that was just what I had. So you guys can just use a big plate or whatever you want to use your colors on. So I'm gonna rinse the teal and the cream out of my brush here. And we're gonna get our base coat of our pumpkins down. So I'm gonna start, this is the ripe tomato and the spiced carrot. I just get a little bit of both on there, it doesn't matter. And again, just make sure you have enough paint in your brush. So pay attention to that you've got enough in there that whenever you paint, it should glide nice and smooth for you. If it starts doing this, you know you need to get more paint in your brush. And I just kind of angle out, so I'm staying with that kind of curved shape here. And just do my brush strokes with that. Now, orange is kind of a transparent see-through color, so I don't want you stressing about any of these brush strokes that you're gonna see, because those are all gonna be covered up. Now we're gonna do palette knife on here. Again, if you prefer a smoother look and not such a rough look, you can still do this painting with just this brush and your round brushes and no palette knife. So if you just want some pumpkins on there, but maybe a little bit smoother, you can definitely do that. So you can see I'm kind of overlapping that line a little bit. I'm not worried about that because some of that color is gonna get pulled in to my cream pumpkin anyways. Not worried about this because I know all that's gonna come back and get edited, okay? So don't get too caught up when you're painting on the small stuff as you're going along. Just keep moving along step by step with me. Don't worry about going back and adding more to this because it's just gonna get thick and gloppy. So you just wanna stay with nice thin coats while you're doing it. Okay, so I'm gonna grab some of my cream over here. I left that leftover orange in my brush. And I'm just gonna pull this. We want our white pumpkin to be on top. So make sure that's what is in front on yours. I think I'm gonna round this out just a little bit more. And again, it's just kind of a peachy orange color right now, and we'll come back and be adding more layers to this. So same thing, you just kind of want to stay, see how I'm kind of doing the brush strokes in curves here. Just get all this filled in. And if you're doing this at home, this is a 16 by 20 canvas that I'm using. Make sure you are painting your sides as you go along. That way, if you don't want to have a frame for it, you don't have to. You can just set it on a shelf, or you can hang it on the wall, and your paint goes around to your edges, so it's already set for you. Okay, so the next thing we're gonna do is I am going to grab, I'm gonna set this down, I'm gonna go and let that rest. I'm gonna get a little bit of my burnt umber, and this is, let's see what size. This is like a number 5, but just a decent size round brush, not too skinny. We want to go ahead and add our stem on there. And you can see my paint's a little bit wet. That doesn't matter either. We're just kind of like a placeholder. Maybe pull that down into our orange just a little bit. Have one over here. Maybe that one's a little stumpier. So all this stuff, I know I'm going to come back and add to it, so I'm not worried about it being anything perfect right now. So I'm going to go with this burnt umber, and I'm going to start here and just quickly kind of outline the shapes here. Plenty of paint in there, just not pressing down super hard. So once I have that outline, always coming from the same point, so it's always coming back from this stem. I'm going to curve another line out like this, another one down, so it's kind of just same shape, just getting a little bit closer. And then we'll have one more kind of curve down. This one's going to come off the bottom. So about like that. And again, I'm not worried. Don't worry about your brush strokes or anything like that. You're basically just kind of getting like your dividers on there so you can work with your different sections of your pumpkin. So again, if you're looking at the original, you can see what it's going to turn into. We're just kind of getting our outline down there. And we're going to do the same thing with this one. And I like this style because it's meant to be messy. This is not about perfectionism. This is just about the rough texture. It gives it a really earthy feel. It's kind of fun. And if you mess up, and let's say you don't like your line where it is, this is very forgiving because you could go back with your big brush and you could just kind of smooth that in and then put your line back where you want it, because we're going to be adding so much to it that that's not really going to matter that much. And I think I may even want to, I think I'm going to change the shape of this pumpkin just a little bit. So that means I'm going to pull this back up into here. So these are very forgiving. You can change just like I'm changing right now. If you decide, I don't think that angle looks quite the way that I want it to, you can still change that as you're painting. So just pause and look at it for a second and make sure they're the shape that you want them to be. Yeah, I think I like that shape better. So I'll come back with my burnt umber again, kind of redo this line here. So now you have a couple options. If you're wanting to stick with this, you can just start coming in and adding some different colors in there, maybe picking up a little cream and throwing it in. But my goal is to try to, I don't want to completely cover up these lines that I have on here. I want to stay within those sections and then start adding some color in there. So this is if you just wanted to stay with the paintbrush. You kind of get what I'm doing there, and you would keep going on with each different color after that. We're going to come in here and get a little thicker white or cream, sorry. This is the vanilla. You can add white in there too. It does not matter. So just to kind of tone down our orange just a bit. We'll be adding some back in, but we want the main color on here to be that cream. It's kind of like that. And then I'm gonna start with our palette knife. I'm gonna get some of my other colors on here. So I didn't add any wine into my pumpkin colors. So inside my pumpkin colors, we've got the ripe tomato, the spiced carrot, the tropic orange, and as an offset color, I'm gonna put this over here. I have that sage green that's just a really pretty contrast to the oranges that we're using. So I've got the sage green that's gonna be in there, and the Key West that I put way too much paint on my palette for. So I'm gonna go back to my palette knife. And this is what I think the fun part is. So I'm gonna start over here because I am right-handed. So I'm gonna start from left and work my way right. So I'm not dragging my hand across there. So I just want some thicker scrapes in there. So I scoop like a decent amount on. Again, see how I'm holding it on the back side, and then I'm able to just kind of scrape it on there. Now, option is if you want to add some gel medium to this, you can. See how quickly I can just fill in this section here? And it starts getting that rough texture. Grab a little bit of this. I'm not worried about covering up my lines. I can even come back with a little brown, scoop that on there and have that be a little more rustic too. But what I was gonna say, if you wanna add gel medium, I'm just gonna show you how to do that. If you don't have this, I use the gloss. You don't have to use gloss, you can use matte if you want. But we're just gonna scoop some of this, and I'm just gonna scrape it on the side of my plate. So when I mix it into my colors, see how that's nice and thick now instead of drippy? So it just adds a little bit of thickness to your paint. But totally optional. You can still get the look of the palette knives without adding the gel medium. It's just not gonna stand up quite as thick. So I'm going back with my brown just a little bit here and kind of going over my lines. Again, this is kind of a rustic look that we're going for. You can use a paintbrush if you'd rather. The design's still the same, you're just using different tools. So either way you want, you can do it. I'm gonna scrape a little up here on my stem. So I'm just kind of scraping it just like you would a paintbrush, just kind of back and forth like that. So let's see, what do I want to do? I need to put some more background color over here. And as far as colors, this is all up to you, whatever your preference is. I'm doing a lot of the spiced carrot and the ripe tomato initially, and then I'm going to come back and add some of those other contrasting colors over top of it. So I'm going to jump over here. I didn't rinse. I'm just going to grab a little bit of my cream, kind of scrape that in. Now if it's still wet, you'll get some blending. If you don't like the blending, you can wait for it to dry, or just very, very lightly. See, I've got a lot on there, but I'm just barely touching it and dragging it across. I can't even hear it scrape when I'm doing that. So it's just kind of moving across the pumpkin. I like to add a fair amount up at the top where the light would be hitting it. Maybe just a little streak in here. I don't want to get too overboard. So we'll start playing with it over here. I'll be loading up my cream just a little bit more. Kind of just using what I have left on there. And this is where, you know, I'm not worried about controlling this too much. I'm just kind of letting it happen. That's the fun thing about using these, is they do the marks for you. Just kind of get creative, play with it. Don't worry about if this is right or wrong. Just start dragging some of that color on there. So I'm picking up a little bit of white with my cream. And that picked up a little bit of my orange. That's fine. There's so much you can just kind of keep adding and playing with the texture like this. We're just kind of building. So I'm going to grab a little bit more of my vanilla to get on here. And we'll go ahead and get some of our grass green. So I'm gonna grab some of this. This is the sage. And I've got a little bit of that scraped in, just a couple areas. Maybe a bigger, bolder brush stroke down in that big section. Just little hints of green on there. I love pumpkins that have a little bit of green on them. Oops. And don't worry too much about your bottom edge. This is all going to be covered up with those vines, so you're not going to be thinking about that too much. Come in here, add some on our white pumpkin. And if you ever get too much of one of your colors, you know the trick is just to let it dry and you can come back to it. So just kind of keep going, keep building up those colors. I like to move quickly because it doesn't allow you to criticize yourself as much, and you just get to see the painting kind of come to life. Again, sometimes just letting our tools do the work for us. I'm going to get a fair amount of cream on there, really cover that in that area. And then I'm going to grab some of my burnt umber again to let the lines stand out just a little bit more here. So I'm just using just the tip and just kind of dragging that along just to make it stand out just a little bit more. I have mine pretty thick on the original. You can tell mine are kind of getting mixed with some of my oranges on there, but that's fine. That just kind of adds to it. One more little section over here. And that had a little bit of the tomato in there. I kind of like that. I'm going to leave that. So we're starting to come along here. I'm going to wipe off my palette knife, get the brown out of there. I am going to get a little more brown on my palette because I'm going to need it for some of the next steps. And I'm going to go ahead and add a little medium to mine. Mine happens to be very, very thin and runny, so I'm going to thicken it up a little bit with my gel medium. So I'm just going to take this excess that I have on here, and we'll just scrape that onto my stem. And we're also going to be using that all around the edges to rough it up and kind of give it almost like a little rustic frame. Okay, so we've got to wipe this off. And now I want some of those pops of color in there. So see how the Key West has a couple little scrapes of that color inside our pumpkin too. And this is something, even after you get your berries and your vines and stuff on there, you can always come back and add these little scrapes of color in there. I just love the contrast. These are complementary colors, so they contrast really well in our composition. Don't want to have too much, just maybe a little bit in each section, maybe a couple little scrapes of it here and there over in our cream. And my cream also has that tropic orange. I really liked the way that gave some little pops of color in there too. A little bit lighter, a little more of like a peach. But I just think it's so pretty. I kind of like that big orange brush stroke there. So I'm just kind of bouncing back and forth between my colors, just kind of stepping back and looking at it just a little bit as I go, deciding what I want on there. Maybe a little bit. I've got a little of the grass green mixed in to this one, just here and there, not too much. So we'll go about like that. Now I'm going to grab some of this grass green and my sage green. And again, you can do this with a brush. I'm just using my palette knife. Same thing, loading up that back end and kind of pushing it down and pulling it out into the shape of our leaf up here. And then we want to add a smaller one kind of coming out this way. And we'll leave that wet for right now because we'll come back and add some layers to it. I may want to come back and add a little of my medium in there. So about like that. Now I'm just going to take some of this leftover that I have. It's kind of a mixture of both those greens, and I'm just going to come across and just add, this is kind of just like some background greenery that's going to be down here in our vines, just a little bit, just here and there. Real messy, doesn't have to be anything too neat. So I'm going to let that rest, and I need to get the wine color. I'm going to put that over here just so I don't mix it with my brown. So I'm going to shake this up. Mine's a little bit watery. Got to shake it up a bit. All right, so I've got those greens in there. I'm going to scrape that off. We're gonna get this ready. That's gonna be used for our wine next. I'm gonna get my round brush and we're gonna start adding in like a couple of these little vines of the berries that are on here. So you can see how messy that is though. They're not like perfect circles or anything. These are just going to be blobs of paint that I did use the gel medium with the wine to make them thicker while I'm doing that. So I'm just going to grab a little bit here, and I have a couple kind of stick up in between. I don't want it too far above my pumpkins because we want to leave a place for our lettering up at the top. So it's okay if they're not real, like you don't really have to have them super thick. They're mostly going to be covered up with the berries anyways. You're kind of just giving yourself an idea of where you want to add those berries on it. And you can also just have, it doesn't all have to be connected to those. Well, I'm noticing it, I'm just going to grab a little bit more of my brown and just kind of thicken that line up just a little. Let's see, since I've got some gel medium in this, I'm going to take this and add a little bit more up here. Same thing over on this one. And just grab a little bit of color, pop that in there. Maybe a little teal, the Key West. Okay, so now I'm going to grab my gel medium. And I've got a big scoop of it, and then I'm going to add it on here to my wine. Ignore the other colors on my palette. I use leftover palettes, so I don't always have to have a clean one. And I'm just mixing that up really well so it's nice and thick. You can see how thick that is. So we'll start up here, and I'm just gonna kind of dabbing it along here. I kind of bounce back and forth from either side of my little stem there. I don't want them too perfect though, so they don't have to be symmetrical on both sides. We don't want things to look too perfect that they don't look natural. That's the fun part about painting and art, is it can be your interpretation. Things do not have to look realistic. We know when we look at this and when other people look at it that they see berries, even though they are just globs of paint. You can have some more separated, maybe a few of them are kind of clustered together. Maybe have a little point out here so you can just kind of dab on, and it gives it just a little bit more detail on the outer edge. And we're going to come down here and start doing the same thing. And again, if the palette knife is giving you problems and you don't like using it to add the berries on, you can definitely just use a round brush. I would get like a thicker one like this, and you can really load up your paint, and you're just kind of dabbing on. So you can do it either way. I'm gonna stick with the way I had it in my original because I like the texture that's on there. And if you mix it with your green a little bit, since they're opposites, it just kind of gives you like a nice toned down color down there so it's not so bright green. I'm gonna grab a little bit more of my wine and some more of my medium. So as I'm going down, the berries get a little bit larger. So you see some larger blobs down here, and they kind of taper off and get smaller as they go up. Can add a couple little ones there, kind of give it a point. Now I have just kind of a little cluster of them down here. I don't have a vine or stem, I mean, that they're going off of, but we're just adding just a little bit more. Just readjust if your paint gets on one side of your palette knife too much. Just use the side of your plate and scrape it and get it back on there. So a little messy towards the bottom. Just going back in. Don't be afraid of leaving some bigger, thicker sections. It doesn't all have to be flat on the canvas. It's fun to have the texture on there. It's just like that. All right, so this is where you just kind of step back and see if you think that's to your liking. In the original, I picked up a little bit of my teal just to give just these little pops of color kind of throughout. Maybe a little bit more of my sage green because that tones down that bright color. So you could have maybe just a little bit more of that kind of coming out in some areas down here if you wanted. They're just acting as little leaves and greenery down there. Now we're going to come back and add some more to our leaves on the sides of our pumpkin. So this one you're kind of just moving along. If one area needs to dry a little, jump over to another, and you can jump back up and fill that in again. Maybe just a little highlight of some white or cream here. Maybe just a touch of orange. I like to add those extra little colors in. This is some of that coral color. Just as little pops of interest, kind of adds to it. Nope, I drug some green across here by accident. We'll straighten that out. See that streak of green that I drug over there? There we go. Pick up a little bit of my coral. Add a nice pretty coral stripe down there. That even has a little bit of wine in it. That's pretty too. So just playing. I've got several different colors in my palette knife, so you kind of never know what you're gonna get if you don't rinse it off or wipe it off. I like to do that because I like to kind of see the mixture of things. I want some little bit more cream over here, I think. Maybe tone this thickness of this line down just a tad. A little bit of green in here. Alright, so I'm going to wipe off that color. So we want to do our scrapes around the edges. So we've got pretty much our pumpkins and our berries and things done. Now I want to do some of these scrapes around the edges here. And you can choose whether you want to grab a little bit more of your cream. If you want to blend that in a little bit, you can. I'm just going to go with just my brown. This is my burnt umber. And you're not getting near as much, so you can see that's not very thick at all. And I like to go just kind of like right on that edge. See how it kind of just picks up the color right there? And then you can kind of drag it if you want a little bit more that comes down on to your canvas. And I have it going all the way around mine, so not just on that upper area, but all the way around my edges. Gotta move some of my palettes out of the way here. A little thicker around this edge. And then you can just decide if you want to pull a little more in some areas, you can. So I think I'm pretty good with that. So we're gonna stop here, and I want this to dry before I do step 2, which is gonna be transferring my lettering on. So you guys are gonna have a 8.5 by 11 printout. You can just print out, position this where you want it, and then either use graphite paper to transfer it on there, or if you don't have any, you can scribble over the back of the letter with pencil and then trace it on there, and that will work the same way. So we're gonna let this dry, and we will come back for step 2 to do the lettering. Okay, I'm gonna show you step 2 of our Thankful Pumpkins. So for this step, you want to have printed off your Thankful file. So this is ready to go. And then I've got graphite paper. Mine's a little worn, but it'll work. So I'm gonna lay that down. I'm gonna try to avoid, I've got a little bit of wet paint there still, so I'm gonna try to dodge that. I might even pull it down just a little bit here. So I'm just gonna position this when you want. Graphite paper, shiny black side goes face down. And then I'm just gonna kind of position my lettering where I think I want it. It was pretty close to where I had it in the original. So now what I'm gonna do is just outline. You can use a pen or a pencil. And I'm just gonna outline where my lettering is. So for this, you don't wanna just draw a line in the middle. You wanna actually outline the edges so you get the right thickness of the lettering. And if you mess up a little on your transfer. You can touch it up with paint if an eraser doesn't work all the way. And I'm not worried about going through like overlapping my lines because they're all going to be filled in anyways. So I just want to make sure I have everything where I need it to be before I move the position of my paper. So go in and do these insides of your letters. Make sure you've got all the outside edges. And so what I'm going to do before I lift this, I'm going to hold it in place and double check it to make sure I didn't forget to connect any of my letters. So there, we're good. So you guys can see that, hopefully. You may not be able to from that far away. And then we want to go ahead and start with our lettering. So we're going to go ahead and do our lettering. This is my favorite paint pen. It's a Decocolor Premium. I'm not sure if it says what kind of gold it is. It's oil-based, opaque, metallic paint marker. I think it's just called gold. I don't think it has a specific name. If you haven't used a paint pen before, to get it primed, you push it down until you get some of the paint flowing a little bit. Just depress that tip onto a surface. There, I've got it going. Do not ever shake without the lid on. I've had people do that at paint nights, and then we have splattered paint everywhere, and this is permanent. It does not come out. This is oil-based. But I love, that's probably why I love it so much, because it gives such good color on there. Get a little bit more paint coming out. So I usually do one coat and then kind of step back and decide if I want to add some more on there. Make this a little thicker coming in there. And if you have a brand new one, mine's been used a little bit. You have a brand new one, you're not going to have to keep pressing down as much as I am. It'll be ready to go for you. So I like this one because it has the chisel shape, and it allows you to do these thick brush strokes, but also hold your pen to where you can get in those little spots as well. So you can have thick and thin on your lettering. I'm gonna have this be just a little bit thicker here. And I'm not going to bore you guys with watching me fill this in. You get the general idea. of how this works. You don't have to sit here and watch me do it. So I'll do a quick little time lapse if you guys want to see how I finish this up, so you can watch it in fast mode instead of slow mode, which is what we're doing right now. Okay, so I'm gonna stop right here. I just want you guys to see the final one, and I'll put a fast version of me finishing this lettering for you. All right, so gold paint pen, or you can use white or black, whatever you want. I just chose gold. And then you're just gonna wanna make sure and let this dry really good. Pay attention to any areas that you have really thick paint so you don't drag your arm across those or anything. So that is it. I look forward to seeing your guys's in the group. So this is our final painting. Make sure you guys can see this whole thing here. So hopefully you enjoyed this one, a little bit different. Look forward to seeing whether you guys decided to do the palette knife or the brushes. So thanks for painting with me. Bye.